What's up, guys? It is July 1st, 2014, and here is your word in the shop for the month. So what we're looking at here is number 30's cab. Some might recognize it, some might not. Off the locomotive. Because I know that my YouTube viewers and my Facebook viewers don't necessarily, go back and forth between Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to explain what's going on here. The 30 is partially dismantled, well actually mostly dismantled. The cab and the boiler are disconnected, the tender is off. Tender cisterns, had all of its paint removed, well most of it anyway. The cab obviously is painted some kind of army green color, and the reason for that is I am repainting the locomotive. Well, the tender and the cab anyway. I'm repainting those parts in order to prepare for riveting, which actually you can see these little dots on the cab. Those are Archer Rivet Decals that I've already applied. On the cab, I'm mostly done so far. It's kind of dark. Let me move this thing over. So yeah, you can see a few of them there. It's not completely finished. It actually takes quite a while to do. But I think it looks good, and I'm really glad that I'm finally getting to this. Things don't really start to look complete on a model until you get down to the little smallest details like rivets. So finally doing that. Anyway, the reason that I'm repainting everything before I put the rivets on is some of you may have noticed that some of my paint has nicks, scratches, or fingerprints on it. In some photos, some of you may have noticed, and believe me, I notice it 100 times more than any of you do. So it really bothers me, and I finally decided, you know what, if I'm going to apply these rivets, I'm going to do it one time and one time only. I'm going to have everything repainted, and I'm going to do it right so that the paint, is the most resistant to scratches and fingerprints if I'm going to have these rivets on there. Because I don't want to have to do this again, and I don't want to have wasted all of these rivets and all this hard work, getting them all straight and lined up and everything. I really don't want to have to do that again. And this tiny sheet of rivets costs a good amount of money, considering they're just decals. They go for nearly $20 a sheet, and I've already used up a good section of them. And the rivets, each row you can only use for certain things because there's different spacings and, things like that. So I've used up a good portion of the spacing I used for the cab already, or used up a good portion of it. Anyway, so the cab is coming along. I'm not going to say I've hit a snag. There's still a few more rows of rivets I can do, but I have a small problem where I do not have enough photos of the rivet patterns on the front, back, and on top of the cab. I don't exactly have an idea how it looks, and I've looked at other locomotives' cabs for help, but I've noticed they have fewer or additional rows of rivets than the 30's cab does, so I can't completely rely on those pictures. So I'm going to have to go and walk back to the spot sighting in Niles Canyon and take my own photographs, which is going to take a while. This project is going to probably end up dragging on for at least 2 or 3 more weeks, but I am prepared to do it. I want to get this thing done once and for all, and then hopefully this will be the last time I do anything major on the number 30. So repainting the cab and tender and riveting is one of the first steps in that. Here's the 30, partially taken apart. And one of the other things was installing DCC in the engine. Now, I'm not going to be running on DCC very often. However, the DCC decoder I'm going to be using is made by TCS. It's a Keep Alive decoder. It has Keep Alive resistors in it, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. they call it keep alive because you could take the locomotive off the track and it will run for at least another 5 seconds before it quits. And the reason they do that is because it helps, a locomotive run over dirty track or switch frogs, where some of them are completely insulated. It helps the engine keep moving even after it hits a dead spot. And that would help me very, very well. Anyway, so I'm preparing for installing DCC in the 30, and it's not quite that easy because the locomotive, because it was formerly a tank engine, all the pickup is on the engine, so I have to cut the power leads from the motor. I have to have wires go from the engine to the tender, and then back from the decoder in the tender to the engine, and then there's also the thing with lights. So I figured it out would be 6 wires going between the engine, and prototypically there would only be 5 hoses between the locomotive and tender. So I would have 1 extra. Anyway, my point is I'm going to disguise 5 of those wires as the 5 hoses, the 2 air hoses, the 2 water lines, and the 1 oil pipe. I'm going to hide the wires in there. The 6th one, instead of just adding, unprototypical wire, because 2 of the wires are for the lights, 1 of those wires is going to be the little electrical line that goes to the rear headlight from the cab. So yeah, I will have all 6 wires hidden and disguised as their prototypes. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Another problem I'm going to have is there's not a whole lot of room for wires to go through, so I'm going to have to drill straight through that frame in order to get to the motor and hide the wires as best I can. Ooh, you don't even know how hard that's going to be. Especially to keep the passageways for their wires, to keep them the right diameter and perfectly straight going to where I need them to go. It's going to take a long time to get that right, so it's no surprise this project is going to drag on for a few weeks. Not to mention, I still don't have the decoder. I have to sell a few things on eBay to make up for it. So in the last War in the Shop, I don't believe I had made this yet. That is the 30's backhead, door sheet, I guess they would call it. It's got 1 detail to get started already, the firebox door. And the more details will be applied to the cab, in the coming weeks or months. But I figured it was just about time I get started, so start with that. Here's another thing. Since the 30 is since the 30 is apart right now, I took the smoke box front off and I did some work to it to make it a little more realistic. And I repainted the star. I've gotten a lot of compliments from some folks on the star that I had painted first. And essentially this is the same star, but I painted a new brighter aluminum silver color over it to make it stand out more, because I felt that the previous star was just too dark. You could hardly tell. And all the photos of the 30 with the star in the picture, it stands out. It really makes the engine stand out, so I wanted to make the model stand out even more. So I finally got to repainting it, and it looks 100 times better, I can say. And I'm really looking forward to having the 30 back together just for that. And also for the DCC capabilities. So yeah, here's the tender. Wow, so far it's all been on the 30. Here's the tender for the 30, and you can see all of the paint and all of the lettering has been stripped away. Well, some of the paint is still there, but that was because I couldn't sand it all the way off. Anyway, yeah, so the tender is going to be repainted too. The top is going to be repainted. The whole thing, basically. I'm going to have to do the lettering again. And the reason I did the tender was because, like I said, there was a ton of fingerprints and scratches and nicks in the paint all over it. And I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to rivet this thing unless, you know, I have painted it for the last time. So I'm going to paint it. I'm going to apply the Rivet Decals all over it. And it's going to take a while for me to finish that because the decals I have here aren't the correct size for everything. Like I said, there's only so much you can do with the rivets you get on the one sheet, so I'm going to have to get larger scale rivets to do some portions of the locomotive. Before I finish riveting, or I mean after I finish riveting the whole thing, then I will apply one more coat of gloss black or semi-gloss to, you know, finalize everything, and then I will start decaling it again. Oh boy, that's going to be fun, you know, because you don't find Sierra Railway lettering very often. So I have to do each letter individually, and it takes forever. Thankfully, I was smart enough to go and take pictures with the tender on its side with a ruler next to it. You know, and you know, I took a few pictures of that, and that helps me with size comparison, and it'll help me to get the letters back in the right place. So that helps. One other thing I did while the tender is, you know, off and free to work on, I redid the placement of the handrails. I pulled them out of the tender more, you know, so that realistically, if a little HO scale guy were to grab onto it, he'd have enough room between the sidewall of the tender and the inside of the handrail that he would be able to grab it, you know. So I pulled it out a little bit more, and I'm really liking how it's turned out. I'm also going to be putting, like I said, when I put the decoder in, I'm going to have lights in the locomotive and in the tender, because I'm going to do that all at once. I'm never going to take this thing apart this much again, you know. So yeah, that's really about it for the 30. Hopefully, like I was saying, the cab will hopefully be done and repainted black in another couple of days. And once it's repainted, then I'm going to put it away. I'm going to put it in a box until it's ready to go back on the engine, which is probably going to be like the last step because the locomotive requires so much work right now. Because they're going over 12 minutes now, I'm going to just do a quick show around the shop. Some of you may have seen my Facebook post where I went to the Bay Area Prototype Modelers Meet. I think it was last weekend or the weekend before that. Probably last weekend. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble remembering. Here are some of the cars I brought. The Caboose number 04, Combine number 5, Baggage Mail Express car number 8. I also brought my Union Tank Lines frameless tank car because it had KD couplers on it. I wanted to demonstrate the Sargent couplers, not KD couplers. I wanted to demonstrate the Sargent couplers. I also brought all of my engines. I brought the 30, the 32, the 3, and Shea number 12. I brought all of those. Yeah, it was a good time, I guess. You guys can read about it on the Facebook if you so choose. Here is one of those cars that I still have to paint. It's really blurry for some reason. Well, anyway, I still have to paint this car like a boxcar red color. But like I said before in the last word in the shop, I don't want to paint it until this car is done because it's going to be painted the same color. And if it's going to be painted the same color, I'd rather not have to, you know, put the paint back in its jar. I'd rather keep it out the entire time. So I'm going to paint both cars at the same time. And it's taking so long because of that. That kit is still not quite finished. It's going to be a while, but yeah, hopefully soon I'll get it all done. Because the 30 is taking up all my time right now. You know, it's going to be a little while before it's all done, ready to paint. Here's a lot of my cars that I'm not using at the moment. Really not doing any operations right now. You guys probably have known that I'm not the biggest operations guy, because I spend all my time working on my engines, you know, bringing them up to higher detail. I'm not always taking them apart just because, you know, oh, I get enjoyment out of taking them apart. I really don't. I get enjoyment out of, you know, making the details pop more, you know, adding more details to my stuff. So I don't take them apart for no reason. Just to let you guys know, because I have gotten comments on that. Anyway, so here's a bunch of my cars, you know, just all sitting here collecting dust. The Atlas junction module, even though it's got some stuff sitting on it, it's got a bunch of stuff sitting on it, you know, you know, I'm not really worried about the scenery being wrecked or anything. I was very careful in stacking all this stuff on top, but I had to make room. I was getting a bunch of stuff off the Warnerville module, which, as you guys may have noticed, was my, you know, was where I had a bunch of my stuff stacked on in the last few months. But I figured, you know, since the Warnerville, I mean the Atlas junction module is nearly done with its scenery. I say nearly, it's not completely done. Anyway, since it's close, I thought I'd start working on Warnerville again and get a second module done. And it will be. I rebuilt a switch not too long ago. And I'm getting things working again. It's my test track. Whenever I get the number 30 running again, you know, do some testing on it. Anyway, I'm trying to keep it mostly clear so that once I get the materials for scenery, I need to get some dirt from Warnerville again because I ran out. I need to get a, you know, once I start doing scenery again, you know, then yeah, it'll be ready. It will be cleared off. And then I can finally put the track back and do ballasting and things like that. So stay tuned on all of this. I do have an announcement to make. In the last couple months, things have been getting really busy with me outside of model railroading. You know, personal things. So I'm not going to be able to do these word in the shops on a monthly basis anymore. It'll be more just when I have a lot of things to update. You know, like when I'm really backed up on updates and I need to share a lot of things with you guys, then I'll, you know, do a quick one, just show you all the major things that have been going on. And also because I've been doing them every month, I'm getting a little burnt out. Showing you guys practically all the same stuff. So I want to wait until I get a bunch of new things to show you guys before I do another word in the shop. So this is goodbye for a while, and I'll still be doing the Facebook updates every so often, but we'll see what happens anyway. So I will see you guys whenever I can. Could be a month, could be 2 months, you never know. Anyway, I'll see you then.